welcome to Rees Talks. We're joined today by Joel Lambert. How's things do, Joel? Are you okay?
Things are good, man. Hanging out in Nashville, Tennessee with my dog.
Yeah, great day, mate. So for people that may not know too much about your backstory, I'll just give you a little brief introduction. Obviously, Navy SEAL. You've done quite a bit of work with the Discovery Channel, Manhunt or Lone Target, depending on where you was in the world. There was also the Predator series where you obviously done quite a bit of work with the Lions, and obviously you went into I know I'm going to murder the pronunciation of this, but Fukushima.
Yep, Fukushima.
So give us a little bit of a brief about how things go. What was life like growing up for Joel Lambert?
Oh, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest of the U.S., Washington State, a little logging mill town. Pretty rough. It was a good place. I grew up, graduated from high school in 1990, and the military wasn't on my radar at that point in time, actually. When I was in my very early 20s, I started having this restlessness, that call to the quest, the Joseph Campbell hero's journey thing. I felt this call to do something bigger than myself and something that would challenge every aspect of my being, and I didn't know what that was. But my dad had a friend who had attempted SEAL training when I was probably about 10 years old, and he came over to the house and was having dinner. Great guy, but he was telling stories after dinner, and I was just listening with huge eyes about some weird Navy whale program or something where they tied him up and threw him in the pool and he almost drowned, and they pulled him out and revived him and told him, you got to get back in and do it again. He said, no, I'm done. And he quit and he got out of there. And I didn't know what that was at the time, but I was a water baby. I was always in the pool. I was always the kid in the deep end with a mask and fins and snorkel that the lifeguard was blowing the whistle at to get out of the pool when the time was up. So every single time I was in the pool after that, I thought about what would it be like to be tied up in the deep end of the pool. And it scared me. And I didn't know how someone could do that. And it stuck in my little lizard stem of a brain and always was probably the thing that terrified me the most growing up. So here I am in my early 20s, needing something to challenge every fiber of my being. And I'm like, well, what scares me the most? That does. And so, of course, by this time I knew what that was. That was BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training, the screening process for people who want to become Navy SEALs. So I did some research, and I enlisted in the Navy, and I started training my ass off, and I shipped out, and that's where it all started.
So we've got to get the background, BUDS. There's so much conflicting sort of information as to how tough it really is. So your own point of view, how tough really was BUDS?
BUDS is, if you're not prepared to die before you quit, you will not graduate. I'm fairly convinced of that. And that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to test you through the physical. It's all pretty much physical tests, but it gets to your brain, it gets to your mind. The physical is the path to test your mind. And, our bodies can do 10 times the amount of work we think that they can. It's just a matter of mindset. And without that mindset, you won't make it. And there are times that you will feel like you're going to die, and you have to have the mindset of, okay, well, I die, but I'm not going to quit. And then you survive or you don't. I mean, people have died in training. I don't want to say it happens a lot, but it happens regularly. And so it's no joke. It is the most physically challenging screening process in the U.S. military, without a doubt. And I don't know of any other. I know of a lot of really tough screening processes around the world, tough in different ways, physically and mentally, and just different ways. But BUDS is right up there with the best of them. It is a brutal screening process, and that's for a beautiful purpose.
I mean, definitely, as I say, there's a lot of people sort of come with different information on it, but that always tends to be the route that people go with is as you say, if you're not prepared to die, you're likely not going to get through the selection. Obviously, Navy SEALs, they know worldwide as one of, if not the best at what they do. Obviously, a lot of the things you will have done, you probably won't be able to talk about. Can you share anything on your experiences in the SEALs with us?
No, I don't talk too much about, and when I was doing all the discovery stuff, people would always, I would always tell my handlers and stuff, look, if they ask any questions, interviewers or press about the SEAL teams, I'm just not going to talk about it for a couple different reasons. One, because it just shouldn't be that. When I and the rest of the guys of my era went in, there weren't all these book deals. There weren't television shows. There weren't, SEAL Team on CBS. This was not, there wasn't Captain Phillips and Lone Survivor and all of this stuff and American Sniper. We went in just to do the job and to be a part of the brotherhood. And that's the way it should be. And now I think there's a problem that a lot of people are going in because they see some of the things that have come to some of us, and they're not going in for the right reasons. And so it should say the quiet professionals. And of course, my shows were worldwide, and I've been all over the world doing these shows in press and everything like that. So, on one hand, I'm like, I'm not one to talk, but on the other hand, I'm not talking about the SEAL teams, and I'm not coasting on the SEAL team's reputation. Everything I've done in my career past that has been me. And I come into it wearing that trident, and that's a heavy weight to bear because I'm carrying the honor of all of my brothers, but I'm not trading. I don't think it's been important to me not to trade on the reputation of better men than I and men that have done more and sacrificed more than I. And also, it's a sacred thing. This brotherhood and this thing that we go through, where you go to the depths of your soul and find out if you have what it takes to become one and stand with these men or not. That is a sacred thing. It's a sacred thing spiritually. It's a sacred thing in the pantheon of men. It's a sacred thing in our headwaters of masculinity, in the archetype of the warrior. It's just the kind of thing that I have the utmost respect for. So I'm very careful about the stuff that I talk about. I'll talk about BUDS. I'll talk about the screening process. I'll talk about the Navy, all of that. As far as operations, it's not that they're all classified or anything like that. Still, most of what I did, I don't think there would be any national security issue with me talking about them. I just don't feel that it's right. I'll answer questions, but as far as just vomiting out, all the stuff about the teams, I do my best to keep it as sacred and pure as I can. Who knows how well I do, but I try.
No, I mean, that's completely understandable. As you say, there's recent years, obviously, there's been a lot of the book deals and people sort of, as you say, maybe cashing in on the SEALs background. And that is, as you say, one thing that you haven't done. Although all your shows, you dug into your Navy SEALs background, you never sort of actually opened up on it. So as you say, I think you definitely did manage to pull off doing it all off your own back.
Thank you. It's it's a interesting balance there. I mean, I have no problem with guys trading on what they have done. And if you've earned the right to wear that trident, if you've earned the right to stand among us, I think you've earned the right to take that into your life after the teams, but there are some people who it's not about them. It's not about what they do or what they've carried. It's about what other men have done. And they trade on that. And I never want to do that. I'll stand on my own. I mean, I stand with my brothers and they've propped me up, and I wouldn't be who I am today without them. But, there's a fine line. I try to find it.
Yeah, definitely. Integrity is a huge thing when it comes to life, really,
Oh, it is. It is.
So obviously, we'll go on now to then post-military. obviously there's a number of guys over the years that's come out and they've obviously struggled when they've come out of the teams and so on. How did you sort of get on with things like that once you left?
Well, that's a good point, man. There is so much of that. And I think a lot of what that comes from is, and if you allow me to kind of dip off into some metaphysical and stuff. If you look back in cultures, especially indigenous cultures and some of the more primal cultures that are more connected to the earth, these cultures that have warrior traditions, when the warriors would come back from raiding or fighting, they would be separated, and a lot of them separated from the tribe. They would be not allowed to come back into their wives, their families, or the tribe. And the medicine man or the shaman would go out there and would ceremonially cleanse them, and would do these rituals and then bring them back into the tribe. And what they did, whatever, who knows, whatever magic or whatever that was, but what it did most importantly, I think, was it said to the warrior class, we see you, we acknowledge and value the sacrifices that you have made and what you have taken on yourself in order to protect and stand up and do your part for the tribe. And we recognize that, and we cleanse you, and we acknowledge that, and we acknowledge the cost that it had to you. And now come back in with our blessing and our thanks. And just that kind of acknowledgement and that kind of understanding, it's something that we don't do in the West. And I think that to our detriment, we don't do it. And so guys carry a lot with them. And I've seen a lot of that from guys in special operations and in some of the more regular units. That is something that's we miss in the West. And we're starting to acknowledge, though, and we're starting to explore some alternative methods of treatment. And something that I found to be tremendously helpful for me is there is a group called Vet Solutions, and it's run by a SEAL and his wife, Marcus and Amber Capone. And they have, we can get into this as much as you want, but they have been pioneering psychedelic therapy for SEALs and other veterans coming back. And some of the stuff that's going on with psychedelics right now for post-traumatic and for traumatic brain injuries and things like that will blow your mind. And there are these trials that are being opened up, and they send guys down to Mexico to experience ibogaine, which is it's the great granddaddy of all psychedelics. It's from a West African shrub, and it is powerful. It's like a 36-hour trip, and it's very dark. And some other psychedelics to reconnect you to source and to yourself, and to work through some of these things that we carry around. And so I think psychedelic therapy is very exciting, and there's some incredible potential there for people, all kinds of people with traumatic experiences. Yeah, that's I kind of lost a plot there.
No, I completely relate to it. It's as you say, it's like obviously I'm in the UK, you're in the US. They sort of follow the same sort of structure of it seems to be anyway. When people come out the teams, they just sort of left to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
Other than obviously, like you said, Marcus Capone, there's a handful of people probably still trying to help these guys when they come out, and obviously the work they do is so important, really.
Yes, there's some really exciting things going on with these assets and what they're doing, and I feel like I've been completely healed from everything that I might have had carried around from just one retreat with these psychedelic therapists. Pretty exciting.
Great, yeah. So obviously, one of the things people probably know you the most from is the shows you did on Discovery. How did that come around in the first place? And
that's a good story. I'd finished up my my career with my final 2 years. I was a BUDS instructor down in San Diego, and so I was working, putting guys through. It was really good to closure for me to come full circle and mentor guys that are coming through the program. But I knew a bunch of people in Los Angeles, which is only 2 hours away from San Diego, where I was. And a military friend of mine reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got this friend who's putting together a television show, and he's looking for a former special operations person with a strong tracking and escape and evasion background," which was me. And he said, would you talk to this guy? I'm like, okay, sure. Well, just as basis for the rest of the story, just realize that everybody in Los Angeles has a television show, has a script, has something working, has something going on. So it's not like when someone says that, you don't take them very seriously. It's an idea that someone is developing. It's not something that's actually going to work. There's about 6 layers you have to go through to get something on air, and each one has like a 95%, 98% failure rate. So the chances of getting something to air is almost infinitesimal. So that's what I'm thinking when I think about this person putting together this TV show. I'm like, okay, someone has an idea, whatever. Okay, I'll talk to him because it's a friend of a friend. I talked to this guy. He's got a great idea, which was Manhunt. And we have several phone and Skype conversations over the course of a couple of weeks. I send him all of my stuff, some photos and my CV, my military resume, and all the schools I've been to, my experience in tracking and escape and evasion, and all that stuff. And he ends up having an interview with me on Skype that he records for somebody, and he asks me a bunch of questions, and I'm pretty much a smart ass on it because I don't think it's just whatever. It's just a throwaway thing. So I talk a lot of smack. And then he calls me up about a week after that and says, "Hey, will you come out this weekend to the Palm Desert," which is like Palm Springs. It's a couple hours away from where I was at, and shoot some stuff for me for this sizzle. And I'm like, "Dude, I've already spent a lot of time on your project uncompensated." I'm like, "I really can't." And he's like, "I'll pay you." And I think, okay, cool. I can get out of town for the weekend. I can go climbing in Joshua Tree, which is right there. Once this guy gets done with whatever bullshit he's doing, he'll give me a couple $100. I'll put me up there. It's a beautiful area. Okay, I'll do it. And so I drive out there, and he asks me, "Can you prepare some booby traps for this?" And I'm like, I'm done, spending a lot of time on this guy, so I don't really prepare anything. So I drive out, and I figure he's going to put me up in some little crappy, roadside motel. But I drive up to this resort, this beautiful Palm Springs resort, and I'm driving up this long driveway with palm trees, on either side. And I pull up to the circular driveway, and there's Ferraris and Bentleys and stuff parked in this resort. I go inside, I get my room, and I just get to my room, and the phone rings. I pick it up, hello, and this woman answers and says, "Mr. Lambert, this is so-and-so, and I'm the production coordinator for this weekend. And I know you're not scheduled to work until tomorrow, but Sarah Davies, the vice president of Discovery International, has just flown in, and she's wondering if you'll have dinner with her tonight." And I hang up the phone, and I'm like, okay, the light bulb finally goes on. I'm like, this is real. This is actually, something real. And so I go out to dinner with Sarah that night, who's awesome, hilarious. She's a good friend, and we're working together again on another show here in a couple of months. But we go out and we start drinking whiskey, and I start telling some stories I probably shouldn't have told her if I was thinking more clearly, but she loves them. She thinks they're hilarious. We go out the next day, and we're running around in the desert, and they're shooting stuff on me. And I didn't prepare any booby traps, so I found a piece of wire, like from a lamp, and make a tripwire deadfall booby trap and crush a Red Bull can that I found out there. And they think it's awesome. And that was pretty much it. They had a couple other people out there that they were looking at as well for the series, and they came back at me and asked me if I'd do it. And yeah, I knew when I was out there in the Palm Desert, I knew that this was something big. It's just, there's times in your life that you just know, and this was one of those times that I knew this was something big. It was something real. It was going to be something significant for me. And so we shot our pilot episode in Arizona, and then we shot the rest of the season 1. And you can watch me get progressively skinnier and skinnier in season 1 as I'm doing these brutal escape and evasions. Which, if you talk to anybody who in my the ground pounder infantry or special operations world, they'll tell you pretty much the worst situation you could be in is an escape and evasion situation. Which is what this show was, which is basically you lost your weapons, you lost your team, everyone's dead but you don't have any communications, and you have like 3 or 4 days to get to a secondary extract point where they'll try to come get you, and they know where you are and they're coming after you. So it pretty much sucks. And so we do this show, and it was all the suck. All the suck was there. It was always awesome and always beautiful afterwards, and I was always very grateful for it. But during the show, I was like, this really sucks. The suck was legitimate. The suck was real.
Definitely, I wouldn't second guess that at all. Obviously, you've travelled all over the world with it. Really, took out, there was a lot of really great teams involved in that. How much sort of involvement did you have in selecting that? Was it anything at all with you, or was it just put on your table and said, "This is where you go in, do what you do"?
I didn't. None of us had a lot of control over that because we were doing this show against real operational units. This wasn't a fake thing. It wasn't set up as like a demonstration. These were operational teams, and so we would have like a 6 or 8 or 10 ideas of people we wanted to go up against, and producers would reach out to them, and maybe 3 or 4 would be open to it. And so then we'd start talking to them, and we had to fit our shoot schedule in with their training schedule because these were deploying actual operational units. And so we had to fit in this whole thing in their training schedule. And so there were several hunts that I wanted to do. I was very excited about, and some sort of administrative red tape bullshit or something shut them down. One of them we were going to do in Brazil in the favelas down there, and that one didn't work out because of scheduling. And then we were going to do Australia and this would have been, I'm probably glad now that we didn't do it because it would have been in Central Australia in January, which would have just been brutal. But they have a fugitive recovery team down there with Aboriginal trackers that are just fantastic. And that didn't work out because there were some, I think there were some government funding issues or something that they ran into with their budget or something. It was something with their red tape or their budget that didn't allow it to happen. And so we would work this out. We'd have a whole bunch of teams that were options, and we'd narrow it down to who could do it in the time window that we had. And then we lined up, what we could do time wise with them, and then we'd schedule it and make it happen. So a lot of it had to do with, we would have all these people that were options, and then it would come down to timing and schedule and red tape, really is what it come down to. But that was good because these were the real guys. These were the people that were actually deploying, actually doing this. And a lot of times the manhunt they would do with me would be kind of their final training exercise before they deployed to wherever they were going or went into the field to do whatever it is that they were going to do. And these are legit, like the Filipinos, the Scout Rangers, they were out there operating, left and right. I think they came right from some operations, did the television show, and went right back into the field. Those guys are hard. It's awesome.
Yeah, it definitely added the excitement of the show for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, after Manhunt, I believe Predators Up Close was next.
Yes.
What was that experience like? I mean, that looked like something you really enjoy doing.
Yes, Predators Up Close was a lot of fun for me. After the first season of Manhunt, Discovery wanted to do another show with me, and so we started thinking about ideas. And there was a video of some guy who had built a little phone booth size plexiglass box, and he was out with some polar bears, and these polar bears were like swiping and knocking it down, and he was screaming, and I'm like, that's awesome. That's something that I want to do. I never wanted to host shows that weren't interesting to me. I'm not a host. I don't want to do, hi, I'm Joel Lambert and I'm interviewing somebody on a red carpet, or I'm off doing some bullshit. I want to do something that excites me, that just challenges my soul. And Manhunt, of course, was that in spades. And Predators Up Close, here we're going to go interact with lions and great white sharks and polar bears in a little cage and let them attack me. That's badass. That's something I can, tell my grandkids about. That's something that is going to challenge me and is going to be an experience like no other experience. I mean, who gets to do that? Nobody. So, so it was awesome. I remember I was having so much fun with it. we were in South Africa, and we were doing the sharks episode. And so we had this pod in the water, and I was in the water. And so the pod had these plexiglass hexagons that, and pentagons and stuff that were all fit together to make this geodesic dome. And for the sharks, most of the plexiglass was taken out, so it was kind of open. And so these great white sharks would come barreling into this cage with their mouths open and just bash into it with their mouths open, like chomping at me as I'm sitting there. Me and Gemma, who's awesome, she was lovely, by the way. And as they would kind of back off and then turn around and swim off, I could reach out of the pod and grab a hold of their dorsal fins or their pectoral fins, or pet these great white sharks, which was amazing. And we had radios to the surface in our full face diving rigs. And as I'm doing that, I get the director. He's like, Joel, are you reaching out and grabbing the sharks? I'm like, fuck yeah, I am. When do you ever have a chance to grab great white sharks? And he's like, could you please not do that? I don't think the insurance people are going to cover that. And I'm like, no way, guys, fuck you. So the whole time, excuse my French, but the whole time, man, I mean, when do you get a chance to grab a great white shark? Never.
So it's definitely a once in a lifetime experience, that was for sure.
Exactly. It was a lot of fun.
Obviously, after that, you've done I think it was a 1-episode documentary where you went into Fukushima.
Yeah, we did 2 actually on that.
It was 2. What was that like?
That was awesome. And again, it was an opportunity. This was the first one. We did one 5 years after Fukushima, and we did the next one a year later, 6 years after Fukushima. So it wasn't 2 episodes. I guess it was kind of like 2 separate episodes, 5 years after and then 6 years after. And Fukushima obviously was this huge world event that severely impacted Japan and several other countries. And in the U.S., a lot of people were freaking out because they would see those photos of what looked like giant red radiation washing up on California shores, and people were scared of the food that was coming out. It was a big event, and so to be able to actually go there to the actual nuclear power plant and go inside the reactors that had melted down, that's another thing. When do you get to do that? Never. So it was awesome. And the thing that stuck with me most about that was I was wearing I can't remember what they're called, like a radioactive meter thing that would see how much radioactivity I absorbed over the course of my 2 weeks there or so. And I could only go so far before they wouldn't let me go in anymore. But the radioactivity I got on my flight to Japan and my flight back was more radioactivity than I got going into Fukushima. It's crazy how much radioactivity you're exposed to on intercontinental flights like that. But it was awesome to see these people, the resilience, how they're recovering from it, to actually go into the plant, to see how everything happened and what happened, and to talk about, because I mean, we have these countries, India and China, and these emerging economies that are hungry for power, and there's not enough. And the only viable way, I think, to produce the amount of power that the world is going to need clean, until other technologies emerge or become viable, is through nuclear. But people are pretty scared of it. But it was an amazing time.
It's definitely that subject, really, isn't it? All the nuclear talk and things, which I suppose comes down to the fact it's the unknown, isn't it? Everyone's scared of the unknown, and there's still so much untapped information there, really. Yeah. So obviously, since your Discovery shows, what have you got going on these days?
Well, the Discovery shows, I was going gangbusters and doing a lot for Discovery, and it was fantastic, and really appreciated all of that. And then I got in a motorcycle accident, and my foot was smashed, and so that kind of put an end to everything for quite a while. I had to recover from that for a couple of years. I had several surgeries on my foot. Now I'm back to 100%. And so over the last several years, I've been doing a lot of Discovery stuff for Asia and for China. They've been showing my shows there, so I've been doing a lot of promotion in mainland China and Southeast Asia. And then that obviously with COVID has shut down. So I moved from California. I live in Nashville, Tennessee now. It's been amazing. I've got a couple projects going of my own, and I'm doing a show, hosting a show that I can't talk too much about because it's not out yet. But it's a 2-hour special on UFOs and extraterrestrials. It'll be on Travel Channel. So I'll be involved in that, which is awesome because I'm kind of a UFO extraterrestrial nerd. I'm into all that stuff. So get me talking on that, we can go. And then I've got a mobile app that I'm developing that fans are going to really dig. And that will, everything on that is going to pop in probably about 5 or 6 weeks. You'll see it all on my social media and stuff. So that'll be pretty exciting. And then, I did a movie last year with Ron Perlman, which was fun. It's fun to act sometimes. And so Ron Perlman, who I've been a fan of his work for a while, I'm a biker. So of course I watched Sons of Anarchy and all of that. And so it was good to work with him. But man, I'm setting up my place here in Nashville. I got chickens, I got bees, I've got an orchard, I've got vegetables, I've got my dog. It's kind of a little rural, back to nature kind of living.
Just enjoying life then, taking it a little bit slower than in the previous years.
Exactly, and getting away from all of the government overreach and lockdown and tyranny that's going on. So getting back to nature.
Definitely. Well, look, Joel, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Really appreciate you coming on here today and sharing some of your stories with us. I wish you all the best with these things you got coming on. I mean, the app sounds really interesting, and I'm a bit of a UFO geek myself, so I'm definitely looking forward to that one. And
They're here.
Hopefully you get to do something like this again.
They've always been here.
Definitely.
All right. It was a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
Good spending time. Thank you, Joel.